Okay, next up. So I've spoken about the theory, but I have made it a little easier for people who want to calculate their target CTL. If you go to www.FitSets.com, I've set up a couple of calculators, particularly targeted at 70.3 and Ironman athletes. So if you go to FitSets.com, calculators, and then you can either choose 70.3 CTL recommendations or Ironman CTL recommendations. Um, Looking at Ironman, I'm going to create an example with some false figures. So first of all, you just put in your first name, last name, and your email address. That enables one for me to get a record, and I can capture some trends, etc., check quality. But also you'll get an email as well, to say you've got it on record. So let's say, for example, I was at 250 FTP. My run speed kilometers per hour is 14 kilometers per hour. It's a little bit slower than 4-minute kilometers over the hour. That is kilometers, so those who use miles will need to convert that. Google's a good tool for that. And then you've got swim hours per week. So I generally do around about 3 hours swimming per week. Not a strong focus of mine. I've got lots of work to do elsewhere. Once you put in those figures, it does give you on the page some calculations, but I'm going to flip straight past that and just submit, and then it will bring up my ranges depending on what my goals are and where I am. Again, you'll just have to read through this and interpret where you position. So it really shows you there between Ironman finisher, bike, run, swim, and your total range for CTL, and then if you want to qualify, Ironman qualifier. So let's call me a qualifier. Ironman qualifier total CTL is somewhere between 103 and 163. I know I haven't been training much, so I'm going to go and calculate. I generally fit in about the 135. But what will happen is when I go to Training Peaks, it will keep me honest by looking at my ramp rate. So even if I want 163, I know my ramp rate from here, because I haven't been training for a while, is going to be extremely high. So in this example, so I'm going to go for 137, which is pretty much in the middle of those two, and see what happens when I go to Training Peaks. So again, this will be an email for you. But again, these are just the ranges you're operating in, and you just need to be cognizant of your volume, etc. But it's a starting point. When you go to Training Peaks, once you log on, at the top you've got your home, your calendar, your dashboard, which has your performance chart on it, and your ATP. That's your annual training plan. When you go to annual training plan, if you haven't got one for this for the season, you click on create. What you need to do is go make sure you've got your races, upcoming races, and the category of the race, whether A or B race, in there, all set up. Then you've got 3 options of methodology: weekly hours, which is basically the old way of doing it, which is particularly volume, really focused on volume only. Again, weak model, wasn't taking intensity and actual body stress into account. You can go on average weekly TSS as the next one, or the third one, which is my preference, provided I do know the athlete, is event fitness CTL. So really looking at target CTL we want for that for that person on race day. So I'm going to select that one. I'm not going to go to the right hand side to see my events. I'm going to say, okay, my target CTL is 137 for my long-term A race. I've got a race in late February, so I'm going to key that, make sure that's on route. So let's go 115 to actually do that Tweed, which is a half Ironman distance race. So that's basically my targets. I put in the date range, that's the year. This training plan is for the year. Periodization, I've got to say, is automatic, so it does my periodization for me. Current fitness, I'll say strong. I've got about 10 to 14 years history in long distance Ironmans. So even with a break, I'm still classed as strong. Recommended recovery cycle. Older athletes, I tend to put on 3 weeks, unless they've got a long history. Myself, I'm going to put on 4. So younger athletes generally go for a 4-week cycle. So a 4-week cycle is 3 weeks of training, 1 recovery week, and it cycles around, where a 3-week cycle is 2 weeks of training, 1 week, and every 3rd week is a recovery week. Current CTL, this you can adjust. If you have a new athlete that's just joined you haven't got the history in Training Peaks, you can go override it. That's what you believe it is. It'll sort itself out after 42 days anyway, whatever you put in there. All right. So with those numbers, I can now, behind this screen, I can actually now submit it. I'm just going to move it across a little bit. Create 8P. It's already given me a warning there saying, hold on, your ramp rate is above what it should be. So I go through that warning, and as you can see there, it's calculated my period, trying to get me to where I said I want to be. Those little arrows, that's really saying that my ramp rate is too high from where I am to actually get to where I want to be. If you hover over the mark, you can actually see it's telling me that the ramp is, if I follow a periodized pattern, it's going to be 13.34. That's way above the 10. So clearly I'm too ambitious, and quite frankly, to actually get to that target, I'm not going to make it. Yeah, and that's going by plan where it actually goes through a couple of periodized base training, and then it gets to a build just before race day in February, and then a taper. So clearly, little ambitious. If my starting FTP is accurate, I'm not going to get there. So now I can actually go back, edit that again, and say, okay, pull my head in. Let's go down to a 120, and maybe a 110, or maybe a 105. Again, I recalculate it, save and recalculate. It'll probably give me a warning again, as there's one warning in there. I can look at those ramp rates. 10.8 is probably still higher. I'll need to read it again. But I'm not going to go through the exercise again and again, but I can revisit this and calculate as we go through. But what it's doing is calculating my ramp rates that I need to get there, taking me through the proper phases, base 1, base 2, base 3, a build, and then a taper, and into a race, and then back through again, and a lead up to my long A race out in May. Then what we do, if you've got to break up then and monitor while the person's training in the performance chart, and when you're actually mapping out that we actually get into the right proportion of bike, training stress, and the right proportion of run, to balance it down, because this is calculated on total. Now I'm hoping Training Peaks have it in them to, in the future, start doing this by discipline, and not just the total. However, what you can do is on the dashboard, a little feature, and a little known feature of the performance management chart. So when you're looking at the total, you can actually filter, and I actually set up for most of my athletes three basically performance management charts, one for all, one for bike, and one for run. So if you look at the all, it'll actually give you the performance management chart. You can actually see how the person's performing on a single discipline. So here you can see at this point my CTL was 71.4. That is late October, late October, 71.4. But if I had actually, that's overall. If I look at my run, I can now um, I was just trying to get it on the screen. It's a little bit short. So you can actually see late October, my run CTL, I hadn't been running, got a bit of a niggle, decided to back off from running. My CTL is right down to 14. So obviously my bike CTL was the one that was holding it together. So if I go back to my bike CTL, try to do this quicker. You can actually see my bike CTL at the end of October was we're still sitting at 48 light training. So it's really, you can actually, when you're doing the plan, if you do a forecast, the dotted lines are actually forecast, you can actually map out and get the right balance between bike and run. Bit complicated from an athlete point of view, but from a coach, really important tools to getting your athlete to where they need to be for race day, getting to that plus 15 and getting the optimum out of it. So I don't want to oversimplify it. This is just knowledge and trust for the athletes. So we're not guessing. We're monitoring. We're getting your data. We're doing the calculations based on proven science. But what is important, we get the feedback as well, because what it says in the numbers may not necessarily be what it is in the ground. If you do get fatigue, we can back it off, we can adjust the figures, etc. But it does give us the tools to actually measure and target and plan appropriately according to the latest science out there on what's working for the people who are qualifying and winning races, applying it to athletes as appropriate to the amount of volume and the speed and the time they have. Real interesting stuff, but it's got to be linked to reality. What you feel in your bodies and the stress is more important than the numbers. I acknowledge that, but planning things this way just gives us the insights as to really where you are. That's it for now. Happy to take questions via links and comments on Facebook, etc. Again, don't want to overdo the science for the athletes, other than it's really important when we say FTP test, you take it seriously to get the data, update your intensity factors so we can actually get this right, and we can get you the numbers with minimal wastage and be effective as coaches. Good luck there. Please, ask questions if you want it. I may do a more simplified athlete, really focus it at athletes, just step by step, if appropriate, and load it up. Right, bye-bye.